Greetings, friends. I'm going to share some stories. These are interactions I've had with triggered white people. And these are all regarding the virus and their reactions to seeing people like myself protesting against the restrictions of our freedoms, standing up for our God-given freedoms. Not that I believe in total freedom, standing up for our heritage. The truth is that white people are their own worst enemy. There's another truth, which is that multiculturalism has led up to this very moment in 2020, where all the other races and cultures sit on the sidelines and watch what will the whites do, even though the whites are vastly shrinking in proportion of the overall population. Amongst the whites, you will find the virtue signalers. You will find economically successful people who live in the nicer neighborhoods. Generally speaking, of course, there's now lots of other well-off races too, like the Chinese to an extent. But that's not the point. White people have traditionally been the ones that set the culture here, and even though that situation has changed, we now see them adopting whatever the media tells them, the corporate media, of course, the government, the institutions. We don't see them thinking for themselves. We see them going along, whether they're cowards or whether they genuinely believe in this new cult of pseudoscience. They are the ones setting the trend. So there's a double truth where it's like, oh, now we're now slightly outnumbered and now the other races go along with this. What can we, the freedom seekers, do? But then, of course, none of that would matter if most white people woke up anyways. And yes, I'm aware of the perspective that Michael Jones would say, like, well, white is not a real thing. It's just ethnicity is the real thing, like Scottish or English or Serbian or like that's the. It's like, okay, I understand that once you break it down, but Michael Jones, I don't know if he would understand that white is still a real thing. We all know what it means. Look at my friends. We're not all from the same ethnic background. And, we get along because it doesn't mean you're the same, but it means that there's more similarity because of your European heritage. This video is really not supposed to be too deep. It's really just supposed to be maybe even an entertaining video because I'm just going to share some stories, about 4, 5, 6 stories I've had over the past half year since this whole nonsense began. And these stories are all they're all involving triggered white people. And the idea is they're declaring that they have had a personal experience with the virus. And then that this justifies that you have to believe what you're told or that you shouldn't be protesting or I don't know. But the thing is you don't really know what they mean because they always walk away or they refuse to converse in any depth. This is the common thread. Throughout all these stories you will see they've refused to really open up. So anyways, the first one is, I guess, these aren't all in chronological order, but I'll start with one which was actually the most recent. At Young and Bloor, just a few days ago, there was a young white woman who came up to our group and she said, she targeted one young guy that I was with. She didn't shout it at the group. She went up right to one guy and tapped him on I don't know if she tapped him or said something to get his attention and said, I was in the hospital for 6 days with the virus, just so you know. And then she immediately turned and walked away, crossing the street. My friend was only able to say, oh, okay. Like he didn't have I guess he hadn't been out in the public, and you gotta have something to think to say back to these people. But it's a learning experience, right? And I mean, you don't have to say anything nasty to them, but the thing is, do you really need to respond to them because they're not interested in talking? Immediately they walk away. Like normally, I would in a situation like that, I would say, oh, like please give me some context. Oh, really? You were in the hospital for 6 days with? Maybe you were. I could believe that. Is that the question? The question is overall numbers here, overall perspective. I mean, and then sure, maybe you were in the hospital, but even then I'm a little skeptical, like, oh, so you just believe everything the nurse tells you now because you had the certain symptoms, or what was your test method like? Do you trust the test fully? I mean, sure, maybe it was all authentic and you really did have it. Then you were still a pretty unlucky person, especially for someone who looked to be between 25 to 35 years old. I mean, like that's very statistically unlikely to be hospitalized with this virus at that age. And so fine. If you wanna correct us, then say actually the data is wrong, or why we can't trust the. I mean, sure, we don't trust everything about the official numbers either, but it's straight from the horse's mouth. But anyways, I don't want to spend too much time, breaking down every story. So that's the general impression. Why did she just target one person? She didn't say it to the whole group because she knows that's not going to work so well in her favor because there'll be more people to respond right away. And it really it's not out of any intellectual reason that she did that. It's just to get a sort of some, not exactly virtue signaling points, but sort of just make herself feel better because she's angry, and so she wants to spread bad energy to someone else. The idea is like a personal experience somehow justifies the narrative. Like, no, it doesn't. That's just an anecdote. The second one is a few months ago in the springtime, I was outside a fast food restaurant where there were these ridiculous restrictions on how you had to, wait outside and just, to get your food. It was just, you can imagine silly regulations. And I said something aloud like, oh, I don't want the new normal. It's stupid. And some guy behind me was like, he was friendly enough. He was like, well, like, it's tough, but it's you got to do it. It's justified. He said something to that effect. Those aren't the exact words. And I got to talking with him a bit, and he said, "Yeah, my dad died from it." And I asked him. I said, "Oh, really? I'm sorry to hear that." And he said, "Yeah, it really changes your perspective. It really changes your perspective." But I asked him more to give me more information, like, how old was your dad? And he seemed to get a little uncomfortable with me asking him questions about this, even though it was obviously the subject of what we were talking about. He said, well, he was old enough. He was old enough. It's like, okay, so old enough, does that mean he was in his 50s or 60s? I'm presuming he was somewhere at least that old. Because, once you start to get into the 60s age range, it starts to get, there are statistically more people recorded in that overall death toll. But let's keep in mind, this is like back in May or June, even by now, by the end of September, the death toll in Canada, the official death toll from this virus is somewhere around 9,200 or 9,400, somewhere in there. I don't know. And so in comparison, like fluid pneumonia is a category collected together that kills around 6,000 to 8,000 Canadians per year. So you'd be looking at a bad fluid pneumonia. But we don't need to break down all the numbers here. But it's a very low number, proportionally speaking, compared to all the other illnesses and diseases that kill people in Canada every year. Cancer, heart disease, other respiratory illnesses, all that stuff. So I'm just saying, well, your dad was very unlucky. And but my mother died from cancer, and we don't shut down the whole country to stop people dying from cancer, even though about 80,000 Canadians die from cancer every year. And I know people would say, oh, well, cancer's not infectious. But there are plenty of infectious things, like I just said, flu and pneumonia. At least the flu is infectious. And so we don't shut down the country every year for that. When there's been bad flu seasons, there have been some very bad flu seasons, especially in like the United States a few years ago. So your numbers aren't really justifying this shutdown, is all I'm saying. It's just like no one's denying that this virus could have killed people and that maybe indeed your dad did die from it. But why the shutdown? Why these draconian measures? It's not necessary, and it's even making the situation worse. I don't like to repeat the same things that I've said in previous videos. I'm just trying to tell you some, stories because those are original. Okay, so another thing before I tell you some more stories, I think part of the theme here is that there is a bit of a emotional trauma, or at least an emotionally difficult experience that becomes an initiation into this belief system you might even call it initiation into a cult. Maybe not for everyone, but I'm seeing that, you've gone through this trauma, like someone close to you died, or you yourself feared for your life, or you just had a very difficult experience, and rather than start to question the meaning of it, of what could have really happened, you accept a story which ties you to a wider story, which ties you to other people who've had the same experience, and it's, I do say cult because it initiates you into a series of beliefs and behaviors, specific behaviors. It's not just something you believe in, you act it out. You wear something and you carry out all sorts of other precautions as well. Precautions are behaviors, which are ritualistic. Just like brushing your teeth is a form of a ritual every day. That, not just something for being a ritual is bad, of course. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying there is a cult aspect to this. And I don't know, maybe the difficulty of going through this experience, it's just easier to accept what you're told and go along. It even maybe gives you a sense of meaning when otherwise you would be grasping you would be perhaps very angry and perhaps experience a sense of uncertainty over, I don't know, the meaning of your life, the meaning of what's going on in the world. That's very unsettling for most people. And most people have alert systems, like trigger systems, deep in their psyche that will kick in once you start to engage them in a direct conversation that might cause them to question these basic assumptions. The trust in the media, the trust in the newspapers, trust in what the government says, the trust, and just basic assumptions they have, like, multiculturalism is a good thing. The experts already said that. Believe the experts. There's not too many. These are some of the basic assumptions. But once that starts to be questioned, there's a subconscious reaction where they turn to anger. And I think that's what we're seeing in these real-life triggered encounters with white people. It's always white people, almost always white people. The other races are watching on the sidelines, even though some of them despise us as well. They're watching on the sidelines for their own reasons. Some of them are immigrants and they don't want to get into any tight situation with their immigration status. That's understandable. But it's more than that. There's psychological reasons, there's cultural reasons. A Chinese Canadian young man that I know and respect, but he gave me his perspective. He's like, yeah, it's true that brown people and Asian people, we do wear the mask somewhat more often than the white people, and although white, he would agree with me that whites are these like virtue signalers. But he said, yeah, it's true that the brown people and the Asian people, they go along with the flow, and because he characterized it as we just try to help, we just want to help the situation. And I agree with him. I do think they often have good intentions, but I think for a lot of these people, the question is, well, are they really helping? Are they helping? Who are they helping, and what situation are they helping to bring about? That is the question. But anyways, I was getting a little off topic there. I was talking about this psychological mechanism that kicks in with these triggered white people when they're showing you it when they encounter you, because they're not actually trying to question anything. They're not actually trying to debate you or just have a discussion. Even a short discussion, even a few exchanges, just for get in a few sentences, make a few points. No, not even that. Just one point they want to make and then leave, if you could even call it a point. A personal experience, an anecdote, somehow justifying a wider narrative. Basic logical fallacy. So again, another story is that, because I told you I was in Ottawa in Canada Day, but I was also in Ottawa at the end of August. There was a second demonstration there. A lot of French Canadians there, a lot of, there were some, it was a big anti-lockdown crowd, loosely speaking. There were more people than on Canada Day. There were around 15,000 people, give or take, maybe more than 15,000. It was hard to say, but certainly a lot more than what happened on Canada Day. And, I've never been too interested in speakers because, I already know what the general message is. I like to get the message out to other people, so I like to be more on the periphery with my sign. So it's more likely that you're going to encounter someone like me if you're someone who's not, not part of our group, just someone in the general public, because I'd be on the periphery, like by the road on Rideau Street. And it was about after an hour of standing there, or maybe 45 minutes of standing there, that a middle-aged man, well, he had gray hair. I mean, and maybe he was 55 years old. I couldn't say, maybe a little older. I couldn't say for sure. But he saw my sign saying the virus is criminally overhyped. My sign. He sees that sign. He's coming over. He's like, yeah, French Canadian accent, because it's close to Quebec. So you think the virus is overhyped, eh? Well, let me tell you something, buddy. My dad died from it. How do you like that? And he kind of aggressively tapped me on the shoulder, like almost aggressively, not quite, but very firmly, and then immediately continued walking. I'm like, oh, sir, oh, really? Is that true? Like, will you debate, sir? Come on and debate. Come on, debate. He's already gone. He's gone. He's not debating. They never debate. They just want to get their little thing in. They're triggered. He was really triggered, though. I saw him continue to walk by Rideau Street. Because Parliament Hill, it's kind of on a hill, so he couldn't quite see probably the whole extent of the crowd there, but you'd hear it and all that stuff, all the people that were there, and he was certainly beside himself. And again, it's like his dad died. Sure, I totally believe that this guy's dad died. Did he die from the virus? Maybe. I mean, like, if that's true, still very unlucky guy. How old was your dad? Did your dad have other health conditions? I mean, most of the people who died have 2 or 3 comorbidities, serious health problems. Again, I don't like repeating all this stuff again and again and again. What's the point of saying the same talking points? But these are the basic facts that they do not respond to. They don't respond to it. Are they even aware of these things? The anger, and of course, they never want to come back and debate, because then maybe he would be even angrier. Well, he was angry that I was questioning his assumptions. To explain a death in the family, sometimes having the explanation brings you a sense of peace. So I can understand that. The problem is, first of all, you can still have your peace of mind about how someone died and not necessarily buy into everything the government and media are telling you about how we should be changing our lives as a society. You can still say, well, I do believe the virus killed my dad, but then it's something a bit more than that. It's something like, no, my dad died, therefore we have to do all this stuff. Now we have to impose on you and me and everyone else. We are now imposing on you based on this set of beliefs that you've been told. Not long ago, I'm at the corner of Bloor and Yonge. We're kind of hanging around there with our group. And by the way, I know a lot of you might think it's silly that I do this protesting thing, but I get a kick out of it, and maybe I'm black-pilled. Like, I know maybe people might say, oh, you're not succeeding, you're not going to get anywhere. It's like, fine, but we're all going to die anyways, and it's true. Maybe I'll get dragged out of my bed in the middle of the night. Maybe I'll get a bullet in the back of the head. You never know. I mean, they've clearly been surveilling us. Once I showed my face on YouTube a few years ago and started saying politically incorrect things, the die was already cast. I'm already a marginal character in society anyways. I don't really care much for this city, which is Babylon, and I don't really care much for... I care much for the people and, our heritage and our traditions and truth, but, we're living in Babylon, so it's not necessarily a bad thing to not be in the center of it all, But yeah, I get it. I get it if you're saying, oh, you're not accomplishing anything. But what we actually are causing a lot of people on the fence to think that is happening. But I'm not saying you need to do what I'm doing or whatever. But it'd be nice if more people took it seriously. Most people are still asleep, right? Most people just, or they're cowards, you're not necessarily a coward if you don't want to show your face in public. But a lot of people know what's going on, but they won't stand for any change. But I'm there at the corner, whether it's the right place to be or not, with my sign, and the guy comes up to me and he says, this guy's middle-aged white guy. I know a young guy that died from it just recently. And I said, that's an anecdote. He's immediately walking away. I'm like, debate, debate, debate. You know the story by now. It's always the same thing. And the numbers of people that have approached us over the past, like, August, July, June, April, or no, June, May, April, like all those months, 5 months, the numbers of people that have approached us to actually debate have, like, you could count them on one hand, like that I've seen personally. I mean, sure, there have been other people here and there. They are very rare. They're very rare. But when some of them do, it's usually someone like this. They don't actually want to have a discussion. Just want to move on. Get their little thing in. Angry. The guy was angry. He was wearing a mask, but you could tell, you can see in someone's eyes when they're angry. Red face. Angry dude. Angry white person. White people, wake up. At the same corner, just a few minutes later, there's a middle-aged white woman comes by me, and I'd flip my sign around to the message that says, "The media are a disgrace." She's irate. She's passing me. Doesn't stop. It just as she's passing me, the irony is that by holding that sign, you are the media. Like passing, I didn't even have a chance to say anything. She's already gone. She was with her husband and maybe some adult children, but very angry and but not sticking around to listen or to make any real point. And I mean, I understand that, like, anything you see you say and you put up anything that's media in a sense. But I mean, come on, that's being very dishonest to say that I'm the media. Yeah, we all know who I'm talking about. The corporate media, the CBC, CTV, the National Post, the Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail, CNN. That's the media. It's a sign for the general public, and you know what I'm talking about. You know exactly what I'm talking about. That's why she got so angry. So being snide, that's like trying to be, I'm going to deconstruct his idea and make him silly right in the moment. Yeah. But I mean, you're not going to make a good example of yourself if you don't stick around to at least pursue that goal through to the end. Oh, you want to be a deconstructionist? You want to deconstruct it? Then fine. Then it's going to take more than one line to do that. But no, you're a coward. You're triggered. Triggered white people, their own worst enemy. So those are pretty much all my stories of people. And you see the common thread. You see that it's this personal story somehow vindicating the whole narrative. Makes no sense. You see the other thread of the anger and the alert mechanism that kicks in. And then you see the thread that there is I want to shame this person. I want to put them down because I'm down. Kind of like a crab dragging another crab back into the bucket. And then I'm going to leave. I'm going to get out of there like the coward you are. You're cowards. Most white people are cowards. And I'm going to tell you one more story because it's a good story. It fits in with this video. But I will say at this juncture that when I was watching a lot of MGTOW videos 2 years ago, just as a side note, MGTOW was a whole series of ideas, and it is a series of ideas, so there's a lot of philosophy there. Let's keep that in mind. And one of the sayings was, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they attack you, then you win. So I know this isn't a scientific study, this video, but it's just a series of anecdotes. And I've been criticizing anecdotes, and an anecdote doesn't prove something, but it's a better sampling than from just one story. From what I've told you here, in my own impressions of observing these things, and which are going on around the world too, Germany, England, United States, of course, and God help Australia. But these things are going on, and I think that we're already in stage 3. I don't mean stage 3 lockdown, whatever. I mean stage 3, where they have ignored you or they have laughed at you, and now they are attacking you. Now they are angry because they can perceive that the hold of the authorities over the narrative is always tenuous. It always requires massive buy-in by the rank and file people. In this case, still white people, but large numbers of other races too, but it requires this massive buy-in. They see it dangling in the air for once clearly, and it enrages them, and that's when they have to attack. And I'm not saying that we're going to win. I'm not saying that stage 4, we win, maybe we get a bullet in the back of the head, who knows. I hope that doesn't happen. I'm not making any prediction as to what will actually happen. I'm black-pilled. But of course, there is another category in between where they attack you and you win, and that is, there's a second group of people that start to watch you. And they start to listen, if only for a moment, which I observed at Yonge and Dundas Square, where we don't normally go, but we went there, and a lot of people, they were just watching us for minutes and minutes and minutes on end, just kind of gawking at us, not laughing at us. It was interesting. It's like they're not on our side, but they're not exactly against us. They're kind of just watching to get a vibe for how is the wind blowing here. And I take that as a good sign, because if you've gotten that far, then you know something's moving in your direction. So the last story is not about any of this stuff to do with the virus. It's with my good friend. He's a mutual friend. I don't need to name him right now, but it's a story that comes to me from my good friend Will, who's appeared on this channel, and we're all mutual friends of this other guy. And let's call the other guy Aaron. Aaron, that's not his real name, but so Aaron we've known him our whole life practically, at least, pretty well since high school. I've known him practically my whole life. Grew up in the same part of the city, similar middle class background. We went to the same high school as Will, and but Aaron has always been a bit different from us, although he's in our tight circle. And some years ago, maybe more than 10 years ago, 15 years ago, Will was having a conversation with Aaron. And he was asking Aaron, like, so what do you want out of life? What kind of life do you want to have? And Aaron he would become very uncomfortable being asked about this, and would say, well, I want the standard, just a job, and, it's like, you want to get married? It's like, yeah, I may get married. And, he did end up getting married. He is married. I'm not bringing the story to talk about marriage. I'm bringing the story just to talk about how did he think about his life, and how does he still think about his life? Like, what do you really want? And he wouldn't really give an answer, and he became more uncomfortable. And Will was asking Aaron, like, so you're just going to go along with the flow, and just, like, you don't really have any grand ambitions or any real, like, what really inspires you? What doesn't something, really inspire you? Don't you want to work towards something great? Do you have any ambition? Do you have something you want to create, or do you want to travel somewhere? So you don't really have any of that ambition? And Aaron was like, yup. That's like getting angry, like, yup, that's it. It's like, so you're just gonna, I don't know, I'm kind of recreating the dialogue here, but I know the spirit of what they were talking about, because I've kind of had similar conversations too. Basically saying like, so you're just gonna plug yourself back into the Matrix? And actually, he did say he would do that. I did actually once ask Aaron, if you wanted to go back into the Matrix and you were offered the chance and you saw that the real world was really shitty, would you do it? And it's like, if you had the chance, would you plug yourself back in? And Aaron was like, yeah, I would. And then we questioned him about it, and he said he changed his mind, but it was too late. He'd already said that he would go back in. So when he was having this conversation with Will, he's like, yup, that's right. I don't want too much in life. You know what? That's fine. I'm just going to go along and have a good time. And, or I'll do what I'm told. And you know what? Maybe you should just stop listening to this right-wing bull bleep. But anyways, I don't, if Aaron's listening, if my good friend's listening, then, he knows that it's all good. He knows that it's all good. I'm just recounting some funny stories. So, there it is, friends. Triggered white people, we are our own worst enemy. It's true that multiculturalism has led us to this situation too. There's a bit of a dynamic going on. But really, the bottom line is, even though, white people aren't quite, the same thing. If you listen to E. Michael Jones, it's like, we do have to wake up. We are our own worst enemy. But just in conclusion, I mean, I do wonder sometimes, like, is it really white people? Because sometimes I think, like most of you white people that I see, you gremlins, you insectoids, like, do I really want to be on your side? I mean, you're not even really, like, what's going on here? I mean, like, I think that's Logos, or that's God, that does get involved. And, I mean, because truth cannot be for only one race, right? Truth has to be for all the peoples in the world. But again, this video is already over half an hour, so I think that's enough for now. Hasta luego, amigos.